Good morning.
Buenos días.
Thank you all very much for coming this early, especially after the great reception party yesterday. It might have been a little bit difficult for some, but you guys are all here, which is great. We are extremely excited to be here sharing with you about our experience in promoting Latin American music. And I am honored to be in company of my dear colleagues, Maria Fernanda Castillo, who teaches flute at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and is the co-director for the Latin American Music Initiative, LAMI. Sarah Smith, that works as a marketing strategist for a firm in New York and works with us in SOLA, in Strings of Latin America, and myself. I am Horacio Contreras. I teach cello at the University of North Texas. I am the artistic director of Strings of Latin America. We are here to speak to you about our journey in promoting Latin American music. As you will see, it's a journey that, especially for Maria Fernanda and I, started a while ago, and perhaps in ways that we wouldn't have imagined that would take us here today with you, sharing with you. And we hope that this presentation that will show that music can open borders, will open possibilities for you to, through providing you with tools, ideas, and inspiration to refine or start your own projects in promoting the music that you care about. Of course, the main subject of this presentation is diversity, and Maria Fernanda will start with some ideas about diversity.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's great to be here. We also wanted to let you know that today is not a presentation, but a workshop. And the way we wanted to share all of our experiences is also by having you kind of like brainstorm, but actually we're going to use the term dreamscape because it's a little bit more positive. So you all will see some handouts in your tables. At some point of the presentation or the workshop, we're going to let you answer some of these questions and kind of set it up for all of you to be able to also think about all of your experiences and how maybe what we have done relates to what you all want to do. So the first thing we wanted to do is define some terms for us to know exactly what it is that we're talking about. And the first one is diversity. We're here in Sphinx, so I don't think we need to define this for this group of people, but still we wanted to just share some ideas because this is the foundation of what we do. So looking into some dictionaries, it was really interesting to see the definitions, and one of them was from the Cambridge Dictionary. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to choose some of the definitions, and you're going to see on red some of the important ideas. So mainly it talks about the fact that there are many different types of things, of peoples, of ideas in everything that has to do with diversity. And the important thing for us is that diversity is personal, is unique, because all of these differences that we see in us actually makes us unique. And what we want to think about in diversity is actually what we care about, because diversity is about our external part, our skin color, maybe our accent and where we come from, but it's also about our ideas, our values, and how we think of all of these things. So it's not only about our background and ethnicity. So it's very personal, and it's what makes us unique. And for this, we believe that not only is kind of like identifying and thinking about our diverse and uniqueness, but doing some self-assessment to think of what it is that makes us unique and what it is that creates passion and drive for us to do or care about something. And this is what will drive our activism and our work. And this is what has driven our activism and the work we have done with the different organizations that we have created. And I'm going to have Sarah now talk about some of the personal experiences and the self-assessment that has taken you to this road.
Thank you. We are very grateful to be here. And I will self-assess first as an ally. And I think, what Horacio and Maria Fernanda have done is just amazing. But as someone who is not part of the Latin American culture and grew up in Kansas, where do I fit in here? Like I said, grew up in Kansas. My mom was a music teacher, and like all of you, my love for music continued me forward in my schooling and my career. And I moved to Wisconsin to study with Horacio. And this was a great decision. I not only, had the liberal arts experience and got to play cello, but I was in an environment, fortunately, where I could be really curious and I could, think about, I have this passion for education. I've watched my mom teach her whole life, but how do we take it to that next level? How do we create more access to diverse music education, diverse programs? And I was lucky to be in a place where I could, intern with SOLA, the organization that Horacio started. And that is where I started to really discover more of my passions, and I benefited so much. And I think that that's, we all know that promoting diversity benefits everyone. And I think it's important to say that, my playing got better. My love for the instrument was reinvigorated because I was liking what I was playing. I was at a point where I was just fed up with the canon, and, very edgy, rebellious. And I got to, research these composers and help write biographies for them where there were not English biographies online available in the US, and just discover so much music, discover my love for writing, and this put me on a path that, led me to really exploring other aspects of arts administration. And I ended up getting to do an internship at Carnegie Hall, and I really attribute that to my experiences with SOLA and that internship. It was personally beneficial, but also it was professionally just such a phenomenal internship. That went on, and now I have this life in New York, in one of the most diverse cities in the United States. And so I just wanted to kind of position that there and go first with my self-assessment. But now I'll pass to Horacio to talk a little bit more about SOLA and how that came about.
Thank you, Sarah. It's really, I have to say, it's really touching for me to hear you talk like that, because when I hear you talk like that, I feel that I have succeeded.
It's like a parent, right?
It's like a moment in my life. So I personally, my background, I am from Venezuela, and I was raised in a program that many of you may know, El Sistema, which is a music education program that connects music education with social work. And one of the keystones of the program is accessibility to great education, accessibility to great music, accessibility to great teachers, to role models, to many things. So when I reflect about my story and how SOLA came about, Strings of Latin America, I think that the word access is a key word there. Being raised in El Sistema, one of the things that we do is that we start teaching very early, and teaching is a way to give back what we receive so generously from our teachers and our mentors. And so I started teaching really early, and I started developing my ideas about how important it was to provide access to other people, in that case, younger generations of musicians, to knowledge and musics that they didn't know. And that's how everything started. I will share a little bit more about that process during this presentation, but everything started with me willing to provide access to knowledge that I knew, that I had, music that I knew, provide access to that to people that I thought that this music and this knowledge would be beneficial for their development. So that's how everything came about and with the years developed into Strings of Latin America.
Yes, and for LAMI, the Latin American Music Initiative is an organization that I co-founded with my husband, Regulo Stabilito, who is around here. Raise your hand over there. And I'm letting you know he's there because if you have any questions about LAMI, you can ask me or you can ask him as well. And we are both from Venezuela. I'm a flute player, and he's an orchestral director. We used to do a lot of things in Venezuelan performing, and an example of this is I was associate principal of an orchestra, the Caracas Municipal Symphony Orchestra in Venezuela, and I remember once I sat there and we were playing an Inocente Carreño piece. He's a major symphony composer in Venezuela, and it was a copy of the manuscript. I could barely read it. And I turned around to the oboe player, and he's like, what are you talking about? This Carreño. You know, it was so normal to be playing from these kind of materials, and it was fine. Once we moved to the United States, we went to the University of Michigan, and with the influence of the Gershwin Initiative, they create critical editions of Gershwin's music. We got inspired and started to think of our background. And all of the music we knew, and we knew the amazing value it has in Venezuela and in Latin America, but because of the lack of editions or so many bridges that are not being built, the music is not known. So we started to think, in a long drive, we love driving long, like very, very long. We were going from Michigan to Orlando, and then we started talking about this, and then we started to dreamscape about what can we do. And suddenly the idea of LAMI came along. The first idea was, yeah, maybe the editions, but then suddenly this huge dream came along. And it was the self-assessment of thinking of what we knew, the contacts we had, the music we love, and then seeing the reality of the lack of what existed in there. And I think this connects very well with our next slide, because we're talking about entrepreneurship. And we wanted to bring the topic of entrepreneurship here because of the idea of creating something that is new and creating new paths, all based on that drive, passion, and love from our own self-assessment and all the things that move us and identify us. So there's a short definition, and I put the little link of where it's come from. But basically, entrepreneurship, a lot of people think of entrepreneurship as let's make money, and maybe it's like a business. But there's a big difference between a business and an entrepreneurial venture. And the main thing is that it's something new, and usually is when there's a gap or something that doesn't exist. That's when the entrepreneurial mode comes in, and we want to create a bridge or something that will like cover that need that is there. And when you start to think of this, is that motivation and drive that will help you overcome all of the obstacles and get you to your big dream. So once we think of entrepreneurial mode in music and in what we do right now, we think of being creative, and this creativity comes from who we are and our uniqueness, and creating that new path and not being afraid of just doing what we feel that we do. Yesterday in the presentation, the opening plenary, she was talking about how she didn't fit in because of the background and the things that she cared about, and suddenly she's where she is. So that's kind of the things that happens with entrepreneurship and diversity and the ideas that we have. The second thing what we like to do about entrepreneurship is to be proactive and do the work. There's a lot of things that you're gonna want to do. There's a lot of ideas you'll have, and you should think about doing all of them. But there's a lot of, there's a difference between the dream and then the steps that you wanna take on, and it's very important that you just go ahead and do what you want to do. It's very important also to be open-minded, because a lot of the times the way and the things and the plans that you have are not the way that things are going to happen, and that's completely fine if you have passion and you really believe in what you're doing. And lastly, to dream big. We really think that if your dream is big, even if people tells you, well, you should, maybe start little. Well, yeah, let's start little in action, but in idea, you should really shoot for the moon. So our first question from our handout has to do with this self-assessment. We exemplified a little bit of how we did it, but you're welcome to write here or just take this handout with you and answer it later. But we hope this can like create this curiosity into what you are doing right now in your work or the ideas that you have for the future. So the first question has to do with what do you care about? What motivates you? What do you want to do? What resonates with you? And this can be as big and as general as your identities, or as dedicated to like what project you want to do, what music, what composer you want to be proactive and give visibility to. So feel free to take some time to write. We'll continue with some of our other ideas, and we'll continue with Horacio and how this relates to Sola.
Well, the first question that I asked is why Latin American repertoire? Like there are many ways, of course, to answer that question. But for me, and I'm sure that for many of us that are here today, one of the main reasons why we do what we do is the love for music, the love for great music. So why Latin American repertoire? Because there's fantastic music that has been written along the history of Latin America by Latin American composers that perhaps because of the dynamics of power, the resources that are there in some places, the publishing houses, the scale of that kind of initiatives is smaller, is more local, and sometimes even don't cover the work of Latin American composers. So in many cases, works have never been published. But there are fantastic works there to be known by people that have not heard them. But of course, it's also music that speaks about a large region that is very important, that comprises around 20 countries, that of course is very well represented in the American society. The Hispanic community is a very important part of the American society. And in Latin America, particularly, also a wide diversity, a rich diversity of cultures is displayed. And this is, of course, shown in the music of the great composers that have worked across the history of Latin American music.
So when we see these names, some of us know these inside and out. Some of us recognize them. I think as a young artist, I knew Villalobos and I knew Piazzolla. And when I started working with Sola, I learned about Teresa Carreño. But we have to take an opportunity to talk about the living composers. I mean, that's what we do. So we're going to put a few names up here, and we're not going to spend too much time, but write them down. Go listen to them. Go play them. And, search for more. I think it's been amazing to see, since like around 2020, how much more like the value of diversity has shown up in programming. And, this has been the work of people for decades, but suddenly we're really seeing it. And just like a few months ago, I went to a solo cello recital at Carnegie Hall, and I saw a New York premiere of Leo Brouwer's Sonata No. 2 for solo cello. It's amazing, but some people don't even know about it yet. And so we just really, we had to take a moment to do this, to plug some people. So how are you going to apply your diverse approach? Everyone in this room is at a different place in their career. Some of you are fellows or students, and you're baking. I'm still baking. And you are maybe doing like recitals and some projects. So start there, choose that spot. If you are well into your career, you still have projects, you're still mentoring, and it's great to reflect on that and to keep looking at these smaller steps. I think in Sola, the best thing I had was learning how to incorporate the values of the organization into my day-to-day life. So I'll pass to Horacio to speak on that more.
Yeah, and this is another handout moment, I guess. In your handouts, you have a second question where you choose your starting project. Of course, I mean, we all know that here there's a very wide representation of people in this audience in many different career stages. And it's great that we are all here together. But for those that have not started, I think it's great to just think about what you like, think about what is something that where you find that it lights you up, and then after you have thought about that, then you do the thing. And when you do the thing, it's going from dreaming to doing is not such an easy thing. And being in America, I have learned about the value of acronyms. I didn't know that. We don't use acronyms in Venezuela.
Nope.
So this is a very, I'm very good about jokes too, so this is a very smart acronym. It's actually, it's do the thing. So this acronym helps you organize your thoughts so that they are achievable. And the SMART approach goes for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So after you have dreamed big, you want to narrow down and be specific about what you want to do, something that you hopefully can measure, that you can measure the success of your initiative, that you can, of course, achieve, that is reachable, that is relevant for your community, and that you can carry out in a given amount of time. I think that is very important. This is a very good resource. And reflecting on my life, even though I didn't know about acronyms at the time, I think that I followed some sort of that approach when I started playing Latin American music back in 2006. And I think this is also an illustration of how diversity can mean different things, even for the same person in different stages of their life, depending on many factors, including the community where we are living at the moment. So back in 2006, I was a cello teacher at El Sistema in Venezuela and university down there. And my idea of diversifying, of providing access to my community was more related to playing the music of living composers that we're creating in our own community. So I wanted my students and their families and their community to know about these wonderful works that existed, but that they didn't know, because of course we mostly hear canonic works that were composed many, many years ago that are fantastic, but I thought that would enrich the community. So I did that, and I discovered that I really loved Latin American music, performing. I really liked how people reacted to performances, to the discovery of these works that they didn't know. And I continued researching through the years and performing, and that's how I came across the book that you see there in that slide. It's very small there, but by the cello, after the cello, there's a book cover. And I discovered that my colleague and dear friend, Germán Marcano, published the first catalog of Latin American cello works back in 2004. So that was a resource that I used extensively to discover works by Latin American composers and perform them through the years until I came to the United States. When I came to the United States, I realized that I was in a different community. I came here to pursue graduate studies. And mainly because of getting acquainted with the work of the Sphinx organization, I realized that the idea of diversity that the American musical community needed was in line with something that I had been doing for years in my career, which is enriching the musical offering with works that would reflect, that would represent parts of the society that perhaps were not as represented at the moment. So I realized that I could sit in a chair and perform, And then people would come and feel represented by what I was doing on stage. And that's how I thought I teamed up with Germán Marcano to update his catalog. And I thought that it was good for people to know about all of this information. I thought that, you know, why I'm the only one, and Germán and just a few others. Everybody should know about this because everybody loves music. Everybody loves great music. Everybody loves discovering great music. So with the general support of the Sphinx organization, we put together the online catalog, the Sphinx catalog of cello works. That was an updated version of Germán's initial work. And that's how Sola was born. So across the years, I was having contact with Latin American music. And I didn't realize, but I was doing a path for myself that would be relevant later in my career when I was inserted here in the Society of the United States, that I am very grateful to be here. And I'm very grateful that I have found a way to make a relevant contribution to the society through my work with Latin American music and the support, the general support of the Sphinx organization.
Yeah, Horacio, that's very inspiring, and definitely it relates and resonates a lot with what we do in LAMI. And we have talked about the dreaming big of what moves you and what drives you, and also to start with like a very specific project. Just start with something. In this case was a recital. In my case was also a recital. And from a recital and from a orchestra concert only on Latin American works, LAMI came about, and we realized actually we can do this. But one of the most specific, or more important works that you can do when you are talking about entrepreneurship and creating advocacy and creating an organization or a chamber music group that will help create an impact is to create some parameters on what you do. And you do this by creating a vision and a mission. And usually we think of this as a vision statement and a mission statement. And we want to help you and guide you on how to create your own, or if you have your own, to just make sure that it aligns with everything that you are doing and you are planning on doing. So the first one that we want to talk about, and it's part of the handout as well, because it would be great if you are thinking about this, is to create your vision statement. And the way you create your vision statement is by completing a phrase that says, I envision a world where, and then you'd say what your organization, what you're doing, and what you see is the dream. For example, in LAMI, we envision a world where the work of LAMI will make Latin American music be part of the canon and not the other, or not something exotic. That's, for example, what we would love to do. We don't think we're there yet. I don't think right now Latin American repertoire is just part of the canon, but I think a lot of people are learning more about it, so we are in the right path to get there. So we really encourage you to think about those dreams and those steps, but also to put it in a vision and what is the impact that you want to create with this phrase. And the second one is to create your mission statement. And the mission statement is really important because it's like an elevator pitch. When you get to meet people that are important, that could become donors or could become partners, you want to be able to say your mission statement like that, and it will represent everything that you do. So we want to offer 3 of the Sphinx, the Sola, and the LAMI mission statements in here. We won't read them because of time. But we wanted to encourage you to create your own. And I have to say, our mission statement has changed with time. It started with some general idea, and while we were doing work, we realized, wait, it can say this and it can say that. So if you look at the back of your handout in where the mission statement is, we added some action verbs that you could use and get inspired to dreamscape some of your mission statements as well. And for LAMI, for example, we wanted to, I'll relate the mission statement to what we do, so you see how the mission statement relates to it. The mission statement should be general, and the mission statement shouldn't say absolutely everything that you do, but it should be like a big umbrella that encompasses that. So for LAMI, our mission is to change the anonymity of Latin American composers and the invisibility of their works. And we do that in 3 different ways. The first one is with editions and commissions on our Alma branch. The second one is to give life to this music by performing in concerts or recording it with our albums in the Ofrenda branch. And lastly, our educational branch, Siembra, where we do residencies and workshops, and most importantly, we did in 2021 a virtual festival, the Lamy Festival, that is on our website. It's available for all of you if you want to see it. It's around, I believe, 3 or 4 days of concerts and panels, all of Latin American music and Latin American artists. And also, we're starting right now with a podcast to be able to give visibility to some composers and artists and to be able to relate to them and to listen to them. Another example is we have a Lamy map, is where you can navigate around different interviews we have created that are not part of the podcast. So it's just all of these activities that I'm mentioning are part and are reflected in our mission statement, which is just one phrase. So we really encourage you to just look into that. So we wanted to see how SOLA relates to your mission statement and the work you do.
Yeah, I think that what we do at SOLA is similar in many ways to what Lamy does. We also have done editions. We have also collaborated with institutions to curate concert and concert series. I think that the main difference with Lamy is, on the one hand, the information that we provide through the databases that we have. Currently, we have the Sphinx catalog of cello works and the Sphinx catalog of viola works. We are working on other databases currently. And also, we provide biographical information, as Sarah was saying before, that is research by interns of composers that are not as known in the United States, or of some that are also known. But we provide biographical information with sources and along with the works for strings, so it's easier for people to research those works if they go to those pages. And then lastly, but I think very importantly, we have connected with the youth of this country through an internship program that we have been running for some years, where people that are interested in learning with us how we have researched Latin American composers and Latin American music can come and work with us for a number of weeks, help us research information for our databases and with different tasks. And that's how Sarah got involved with SOLA. That's a great asset, and I have found that through the internship program we have been able to positively influence the career of young artists in the United States.
Very true. So we spent some time reflecting on our values, our identities. We've spent some time talking about our projects, and you've maybe spent some time thinking about your projects or what you want to do. But once you've gotten that ball rolling, what is the next step? How do you amplify that? How do you scale up that impact? I think once you started your projects, Horacio in these planning meetings really spoke about the importance of connecting with your personal community to find your niche. Your niche is not just going to be within yourself. What do I like the most? That's important. But also, who's in your life, who's in your community directly. Then building on that, who's in your professional network, that's going to help as you get things going, establish credibility, open up resources, and bring your work to a bigger audience. We all know that, and we're here and we're networking, and sometimes it's frustrating that it feels like, I can't get a certain job without knowing someone. And that is frustrating, and sometimes it's gatekeepy. But at the same time, when you are putting yourself out there and you're developing these ideas or you're going after things, it can be such a positive thing. And I think I've had to remind myself to think about it that way. I look at different moments in my very early career, and I I try to look at how grateful I am for the network I did have, even though it can be frustrating. And then lastly, we're going to look at marketing and branding and how that can expand your impact. And I think, before I pass the floor back to Horacio, when thinking about, marketing and branding and some of these more seemingly commercial sides of the entrepreneurial venture, it's important to think, no matter where you are in your project or your career, about the labor that takes and about the resources that can take. And, sometimes you're doing so much great work, but it's not getting out there. So sometimes you have to maybe pause and spend some time really investing in expanding the impact of what you've already done. I mean, we're here, and now so many more of you know about Sola and Lamy. So I just wanted to make a note of that. That's something I've noticed, when I worked at Carnegie Hall for a year. Some of the work was just so amazing, but they needed to pause, and with one specific project, they had to pause it so they could market it and they could get it out there to people. And I think that was a really helpful insight.
Yeah, I agree. I think that definitely we need to see the community as an asset. And that is something that's a very valuable skill. Learning how to read the community where you belong, learning how to read what are the needs of those communities, and learning how you can fit in the community. How can you create a positive impact? In my case, what I feel that the idea behind my role in my career advocating for Latin American music has been that I have been in between people. I have found a place to connect people. In the case of the recital, for example, I connected composers and music on the one hand with venues and audiences on the other hand. In the case of Sola, that has expanded, and I have been able to connect. Of course, it's always about people. I think it's important to know that it's always about people, but I have been able to connect the music of Latin America and creators from Latin America, researchers from Latin America, musicians from Latin America, to organizations from the United States. So as it happened with my dear colleague Germán Marcano, that I connected his work with Sphinx and I worked with him to update it. I also connected Jesus Alfonso, who composed the Viola catalog, and we're helping updating that constantly as well. Or the esteemed Cuarteto Latinoamericano that has a fantastic biblioteca virtual library of string quartets that where people can have access to, even to scores. They have scores there, and I have connected those persons and their work with institutions such as Sphinx, cellovelo.org, which is a very important resource for cellists internationally, the Free Library of Philadelphia, or and very especially within Kermezzo, which is an organization that is run by a dear friend and colleague of mine that showed me what was the importance of an image that would really express your idea and that was appealing to the general public, so that your message gets out and is attractive to people.
So Horacio just mentioned Megan and Herman, and they're so key in how Sola was started, and really also key in the branding efforts. You can really see that Megan, who worked on Sola's branding and their logos, started from a place of what logo would represent what we care about. How would our mission look visually? What would remind us of our mission when we saw it? What would be really clear? And I think as you start an organization or you're promoting a project or you work at an organization and you're promoting your programs, it's important to go back to those more mission-centered questions with the marketing, because it's easy to get caught up in like design principles, and it's very important that it looks beautiful and professional. But at the same time, I think what Megan did with Sola's branding is so incredible, because when you see Sola and you see that F hole, you see the F hole and you can think immediately of strings of Latin America. You can see that F hole and you can see that it's made up of all of the Latin American countries. And you can see strings of Latin America. You can also see that the size of those countries, if you look closely, has been played with so that everyone is represented, kind of on an equal footing. Some of those countries are much smaller on the map, but Megan made it so that all of them would be represented. And that impact has been, just so widespread, because it's beautiful and people want to share that image, but also people see themselves in that image and they see the mission, the heart of the mission in that image. And her branding extends to the editions that Sola does. She'll draw sketches of composers who maybe don't have readily available clear images, and people feel represented, and that has led to international success. Sola and Lamy were created, developed in the States, and people like me benefited from that, and I'm so grateful. But we also have to speak to the international impact that this has had on people in Latin America who feel represented. And when Horacio speaks about that, it's just very clear that the branding has carried that message, and they're seeing themselves and they're reaching out. They're getting involved. They're making sure, I'm working on this amazing thing, make sure it's in the catalog so it can be shared. And that is incredible. That's branding that you hope for. And, going from there, you can really start to evaluate that impact. We're seeing the personal side of this marketing, peer-to-peer, social media, and it's this beautiful image and it's this beautiful mission, and people want to share it. And people are having quality experiences with these resources, at these concerts, and you can't undervalue that. When people have, a quality experience or a quality connection to something really genuinely good, they share it with the people they have the most influence on. And that can go way further than some over-the-counter marketing. But at the same time, this beautiful image is also very appealing for institutional partnerships. I think Horacio spoke about the networking, getting connected to Sphinx, getting connected to these other bigger institutions really widen the audience and increase the resources for Sola. And that is key, I think, in the growth that it's had. And then that third step with growth, what is next? Now you guys know about Sola and Lamy, but maybe you didn't before, and that's okay. We are smaller teams, and consistent marketing campaigns take a lot of work and a lot of resources, and that can be a next step. But as I spoke to earlier, and as Horacio spoke to earlier, you have to approach things in a smart way. And sometimes, marketing efforts, they're going to take a lot of resources, and you need to take that measurable approach and be flexible with that, because this is a continuous thing. But my favorite part about Sola's marketing in general and its social media presence is that it is so personal, and it does lead to people becoming, spokespersons and wanting to share the music and wanting to share things. So I think with that, I'll pass it to Maria to speak more about kind of the messiness of all of this.
That's a good segue. Yeah. So after thinking, we have taken you to a little road of the dream and I'm always going back to that, but the dream and the projects and then the vision, the parameters, and then growing. And we hope that handout can help you now or in the future to inspire you and to help you motivate your own advocacy project and entrepreneurial venture. But we wanted to really highlight that in all of our paths that we have had with Lamia and Sola, and even your career, Sarah, the important thing is to be flexible. A lot of the times when you have a project that you want to do, a recital that you want to program, an album that you want to record and want to release within a year, mine is taking 4 years to release. And it's just very important to be flexible because I want that music to be out there. I don't care when at this point, I just want to be out there. So just being able to have your dream and your goal very clear, and then to be able to be flexible and adapt to what reality brings, to all the partnerships that come along, or all the realities of life that are going to hit our lives at some point. But if your passion that came from that self-assessment at the very beginning, it really drives you and makes you thrive on that, you will always get there, even if it is sooner or later, or after taking all of these little turns that looks like a little knot in here. So we really want to emphasize that, to just stay focused on your expectation and your goal, and just to be flexible. And lastly, we hope today is a day where you are dreamscaping, and you are planting a seed for something amazing that you can create in the future. The important thing is that through time you are watering it, that you are feeding it, and you're just making sure that you are growing with your goal by yourself or with the partners and friends that you can go along with this. Horacio?
And with this, we are going to close the presentation and workshop. Of course, I don't want to close before thanking everybody again for being here. Of course, thanks to the Sphinx organization for the wonderful resources, for creating these spaces, for basically being a horizon for all of us, where we can look and walk towards that horizon, for showing us the path. Thank you, Maria Fernanda and Sarah, for sharing this presentation with me. I am honored again to be sitting here with you speaking about Latin American music. You all can see our information in that last slide. In 1 minute, we will open the space for questions. But if you think of a question that later in the day or in the week or whenever you want to reach out, we are, of course, very happy to hear from you and to explore your ideas, to help you find your path, or perhaps hear how do you guys think we can improve. So please write us. And with that, I want to open the space for questions. Thank you very much.
I believe we have a microphone for live questions, and we also have the opportunity to ask questions in the app. If you go to the event, there's a little tab where you can click Ask Questions, and Jalen will choose a question to read. So please feel free to just ask.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jalen Vernon, and I'm going to be guiding you all through the Q&A session today. So like she mentioned, we do have 2 options for Q&A, so you guys can either raise your hand and come up and speak out loud, or you can use the Sphinx app to submit your question. So I'll just walk you guys through that right now. So if you open up the Sphinx app and navigate to Convening Schedule, you can just scroll to our session. Music opens borders, 9:40 a.m. And then from there, you just click that little calendar, that little appointment. And then right as you click that, it should open up a page. And at the top of the page, it should say Ask a Question. And once you click Ask a Question, it'll direct you to Slido. And from there, you can type your question. We'd also recommend, if you see a question that you like, or that you have the same question, that you just like it. And that way, it'll show up at the top of the list on the iPad, and I know which questions to ask. So does anyone have a question right now? Feel free to come up.
Hi, my name is Ellie. I actually recently found out about Lamy because I'm doing a recording project. I'm doing an album of oboe music. I'm an oboist, and it's completely for underrepresented composers, minority composers that have passed away, actually, specifically because they can't promote their music anymore. And in that search, I found Lamy and a couple of quintets that you guys did. And I actually really wanted to play some of the music that you guys did, but it was really hard to find. And so I guess the question I had written down was like, what can you do to acquire Latin music when they're all like only published in Venezuela, for example? Or how do you share this music when it's only like, you can, like, to find it, you need to know Spanish, for example. Like, in order to find Lamy, I had to look up music in Spanish, like Quinteto para Vientos. I couldn't find like Quintet for Winds by Latin American composers. So yeah, that's my question.
Eli, this is a great question, and thank you so much for bringing it out. So actually, and we were just talking about this, how SOLA and LAMI is an organization that promotes and is based on Latin American music, but we both created SOLA and LAMI in the United States. And this is why this presentation is in English and not in Spanish. And actually, when you go to our websites, at least LAMI is in English for now, and you have the English and Spanish version on SOLA. Yeah, so I think this is great, and knowing this reality is amazing for us to be able to build more bridges to be able to communicate with that. A great way to be able to find this music is to do what you're just doing now and contacting the people, or if you find a recording, just reaching out to the YouTube page, and however you can. I find that can be very successful, and sometimes it can be very hard to be able to find the contact. But if you want to get the information, that's a great way to do it. Just keep reaching out to be able to do it. For Lami's music that we are commissioning and that we are editing, we are right now in the process of partnering with Just a Music Theory Press, which is a publishing company that was also based in the University of Michigan, where we were created. And that's how we're going to be able to publish our music, and you'll be able to find our music there. Yeah, and we can talk later about the quintetos that you found, and being able to know about the translation, the Quinteto para Vientos and the quintet is important for us to just be able to have that search in both languages. Thank you, but we can talk in a little bit later. Yeah. Any other questions?
One more question from the virtual Q&A. Someone asked, how do you decide which composers, more specifically living composers, to highlight through your work?
If I think the slide of expectation and realities is very illustrative of that process. We all think that we will have a straight line, but the reality is more complicated than that. So I think that in my case, at the least, when I reflect back, everything comes to people that I know, or people that I know of, and that I am interested in their music and in their personality, and I have seen them talk. Or, of course, there are major composers that are more widely known. So it depends. It depends, I believe. But in my case, at the least, working with living composers, in this room, there are two composers of whom I have premiered pieces. And I have premiered their pieces because I know them, and I have liked their music, and I have liked working with them. So that has been in many cases, the way for me.
Yeah, I think that with living composers and non-composers that we want to represent and perform or highlight in some way, the list can be huge, and we need to start somewhere. So for programming recitals, it could be based on the theme. Like if we're choosing a theme for a recital or an album, like who is the composer that would match what we're doing. But the line of expectation and reality is very important. I have had to change some of the living composers that I'm including in my album, and it has to do with some things that have happened in the process of finding the music, for example. So like I think that those are aspects that influence who we highlight, but I think our dream in the future is that we highlight everyone. So maybe with time we'll have time and the possibility to be able to, in different projects and albums and things that we do, be able to highlight everyone that is there.
I just want to say one thing. I think the beauty of it is that we all love and value different things. And if we're all sharing the things that we value and love or find interesting or important, they will all be shared. Like, you know, these composers write so many different genres, instrumentations, you know, and sometimes I would share things because I would work on a biography and be like, this story is so cool. Or this girl is like such a badass, like I have to share her story. And sometimes I would share it because I loved listening to the music. And I was like, I want to share this on my Instagram story. So, you know, if you're in a position of power, you're a programmer, or you're putting on a recital, you do have other things to consider, but I think it will all be shared.
Any other questions?
Any live questions from the audience? Come on up.
Don't be afraid of the mic.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Danielle Belen, and I teach violin at University of Michigan.
Go Blue!
Hello. And I know you all on the stage. Horacio, I have a question for you, and I think everyone on stage could probably speak to this as well, about balancing your career with your teaching career with your passion for being creative. And today, of course, we're focusing on your creative output, but many of you in the room probably know Horacio is one of the most brilliant cello professors in the country, if not worldwide. And I say that also, I hire him. He's on my faculty at Center Stage Streets. Okay, so quick plug. Anyway, Horacio, back to you. I would love to personally know from you, most of your days are spent teaching and giving to individuals and students, and you are so passionate in giving and with your time and your energy to your students and your professorship. How do you balance that with then turning your focus inward into your own projects, your own creative projects? How do you flip that switch? I find it to be very difficult.
It is very difficult, and of course, the reality of things is that things sway depending on how your life is in the moment. But I think that, and I believe that this would be the case for many of us here. We have developed like a kind of a multiple screen brain capacity where you have like different layers of thought that you are taking care of at the moment, I guess. So what I do is I have like, of course, the famous short-term, middle-term, long-term project, and I work depending on the urgency of things. And of course, students are always an urgent thing because they need you there. So they are always in the front of my mind. But then I have these projects, for example, for Sola. Right now, I am working through our capacity to publish works by other people, and I'm speaking with people slowly to give shape to that side of things. And I know that has its own time, and I honestly, I don't feel in a rush. We are also working on the violin catalog, and we'll speak more about that. But yeah, little by little, we'll put some here, some here, some here, you know, once a week, 1 hour a week for that kind of organization, so that things keep growing, even though, yes, my main focus of energy in most of the years is teaching.
Well, thank you for joining us here at Sphinx. Unfortunately, we are out of time for the Q&A session. But if you have any more questions, feel free to connect with our guests.
Thank you so much. Gracias.
Thank you.